A single headline, a shocking claim, and suddenly the internet was on fire. Meghan Markle sues Tom Bower for exposing Archie's real dad. Within minutes, millions were asking the same question. Could this possibly be true? The words spread fast, stirring emotion, confusion, and disbelief. Some were shocked. Others were angry. And many were left wondering how a story this explosive could appear so suddenly without any official confirmation. Because if it were true, it would shake the royal narrative forever. But here's where things take a sudden turn. Behind the viral posts, behind the dramatic captions, and behind the bold accusations, something doesn't quite add up. No official statement, no court documents, no confirmation from the palace. And yet the story keeps spreading, louder, faster, and more distorted with every share. Why? Because when it comes to Meghan Markle, the world rarely waits for facts. Every silence becomes a scandal. Every rumor becomes a headline. And every emotional story becomes fuel for speculation. But what if this isn't a legal battle at all? What if the real story isn't about a lawsuit, but about how easily misinformation can turn into truth overnight? As the internet explodes with theories, one question remains. Is this a shocking revelation? Or another dangerous rumor built on emotion rather than evidence? What you're about to hear isn't gossip. It's the reality behind the headlines, the truth behind the noise, and the reason this story is far more complicated than anyone expected. Because sometimes, the loudest stories hide the quietest truths. The moment the headline appeared, it sent a ripple through the online world. Within seconds, curiosity turned into confusion, and confusion quickly became speculation. The claim was bold, emotional, and impossible to ignore, a suggestion that Meghan Markle had taken legal action against author Tom Bower over deeply personal allegations involving her son, Archie. For many, it felt shocking. For others, it felt familiar because when it comes to Meghan, stories like this often move faster than the truth itself. The internet has a way of turning whispers into wildfire, and this was no exception. Posts spread rapidly across social platforms, each adding more drama, more intensity, and more emotion. Yet beneath all the noise, one crucial detail was missing. Confirmation. No official court filings, no legal statements, no verified sources. Still, the story took on a life of its own. This is not the first time Meghan has found herself at the center of an online storm. From the earliest days of her relationship with Prince Harry, she has been a figure both admired and criticized, praised and questioned. Her life has been examined under a microscope few could endure, with every silence interpreted and every expression analyzed. What made this moment particularly unsettling? Was the subject at its core a child? Archie has been kept largely out of the public eye by design. Both Meghan and Harry have repeatedly expressed their desire to protect their children from the pressures of public life. They've spoken openly about boundaries, privacy, and the emotional cost of constant scrutiny. And yet, despite those boundaries, rumors continue to emerge, often without evidence, driven by speculation rather than truth. Tom Bower, known for his critical biographies and investigative style, has written extensively about royal dynamics. His work often provokes strong reactions. But even within his controversial writings, there's been no verified claim questioning Archie's parentage. Still, in the digital age, context is often stripped away, leaving behind only shock value. Once a narrative takes hold online, it rarely waits for facts. People begin to ask questions not because evidence exists, but because emotion invites curiosity. The idea of a hidden truth, a dramatic revelation, or a secret exposed is powerful. It draws attention, it generates clicks, and it spreads faster than any correction ever could. For Meghan, this cycle is painfully familiar. She has faced years of intense scrutiny, not just as a public figure, but as a woman navigating motherhood under a global spotlight. Every choice, every silence, every boundary has been interpreted, twisted, or misrepresented. Those close to her say that what affects her most isn't criticism, it's misinformation. Especially when it involves her children, the emotional toll of seeing false narratives attached to one's family cannot be overstated. Even when untrue, such stories linger. They travel far, and they leave a mark. This is why the recent rumors struck such a nerve. Not because they revealed something new, but because they once again blurred the line between truth and fiction. Behind the scenes, there's been no dramatic courtroom confrontation. No explosive confrontation. No hidden documents waiting to be revealed. What exists instead is silence. Not the kind that hides guilt, but the kind that refuses to give power to falsehood. Those familiar with Meghan's past legal actions note that when she chooses to act, she does so deliberately and transparently. Her previous lawsuits were rooted in privacy violations and published evidence, not rumor or speculation. This moment, however, appears to be something different entirely. It highlights how quickly misinformation can evolve into perceived reality, especially when fueled by emotion, bias, and the allure of scandal. It also reflects a broader issue within modern media, where the speed of sharing often outpaces the responsibility to verify. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that behind every headline is a human story. A mother, a child, a family trying to live beyond the noise. The irony is that while the internet debates imagined controversies, the truth remains simple and unchanged. Archie is a child growing up away from the spotlight his parents deliberately stepped back from. There is no hidden legal battle, no exposed secret, only speculation fueled by repetition. As the noise continues, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This story is not about legal action or secret revelations. It is about how easily narratives can be shaped, distorted, and believed, even without evidence. And in a world where attention is currency, silence can often be the most powerful. Response. As the headlines continue to circulate, the question becomes less about what is being said and more about why people are so quick to believe it. Because sometimes, the real story isn't the rumor itself. It's the way it spreads. As the online conversation continued to grow, something became increasingly clear. This was no longer just about a headline. It was about how easily perception can replace truth when emotion takes the lead. The story had taken on a life of its own, evolving far beyond its origins and settling into the public imagination as something far more dramatic than reality. For Meghan, moments like this are not unfamiliar. Over the years, she has watched narratives form around her with little regard for accuracy or impact. Some fade quickly. Others linger, reshaped and repeated until they feel real to those watching from the outside. This moment, however, struck deeper, not because of what was said, but because of who it involved. Children, especially those who never chose public life, represent a line that many believe should never be crossed. And yet, time and again, speculation drifts dangerously close to that boundary. Those close to Meghan say she has always been deeply protective of her children's emotional world. Not out of secrecy, but out of care. She understands that once a narrative takes hold online, it can follow a child for years, shaping perceptions before they even understand them. This is why the recent wave of speculation struck such a sensitive nerve. There was no official announcement, no legal filing, no confirmation from credible sources. Yet the emotional impact was real. The suggestion alone, however unfounded, carried weight. It reopened wounds from years of public scrutiny and reinforced the reality that misinformation, once released, cannot be easily recalled. People close to the situation say Meghan's response was not anger, but exhaustion. An exhaustion that comes from repeatedly watching personal moments be repackaged for consumption. The kind that settles quietly rather than exploding outward. What often goes unnoticed is the emotional discipline it takes to remain silent when stories spiral beyond control. Silence in these moments is not weakness. It is restraint. It is choosing peace over chaos. And that choice is rarely understood by the public. Many assume that if something isn't denied loudly, it must contain truth. But the reality is often the opposite. Responding to every rumor can give it power. Ignoring it, while painful, sometimes prevents it from growing further. This is a lesson Meghan has learned the hard way. In the past, she has spoken openly about the toll that constant scrutiny took on her mental well-being. She has described feeling misunderstood, isolated, and overwhelmed by narratives that bore little resemblance to her lived experience. And while time has passed, the pattern remains. What makes this moment different is the emotional maturity with which it is being handled. There are no dramatic statements, no reactive moves, just quiet resolve. Those familiar with the situation say the focus remains on protecting what matters most: family, peace, and stability. The noise of speculation fades in comparison to the reality of daily life. School routines, shared meals, quiet laughter, and moments of normalcy that rarely make headlines. This is the side of life the public rarely sees. The side where there are no scripts, no cameras, and no performances. Just people living through something deeply personal, and yet the world continues to watch. The fascination with royal narratives has always been rooted in emotion, admiration, curiosity, and sometimes judgment. But when that fascination crosses into conjecture, it becomes something else entirely. What this moment reveals is not a hidden truth about Meghan or her family, but a truth about how stories are consumed. How easily emotion overrides verification. How quickly speculation becomes fact when repeated often enough. It also raises a deeper question. Why do certain narratives take hold so easily? Why do some stories feel more believable simply? Because they align with preconceived ideas? Perhaps it's because complexity is uncomfortable. It's easier to accept a dramatic explanation than to sit with uncertainty. Easier to believe in a scandal than in the quiet reality of ordinary family life, and yet, the quiet reality is often where the truth lives. As time passes, this story will likely fade, replaced by the next viral headline. But the impact, the emotional residue, will remain for those who live through it. For Meghan, this is not just about a rumor. It's about the ongoing challenge of protecting one's humanity in a world that profits from exposure. It's about maintaining dignity in the face of distortion. And for the public, it's an opportunity to pause, to reflect on how narratives are formed, and what responsibility we carry as consumers of information. Because behind every headline is a human story, and behind every rumor is a person who feels its weight. This moment, like many before it, serves as a quiet reminder. Not everything that trends is true, and not every silence hides a secret. Sometimes silence is simply strength. As the noise surrounding the story slowly began to soften, something else became clearer: the emotional cost of living under constant scrutiny. While public attention shifted from headline to headline, the reality for those involved remained deeply personal and quietly enduring. For Meghan, this moment reflected a familiar pattern. Over the years, she has learned that public opinion often moves faster than truth, and once a narrative takes hold, it rarely waits for clarity. Even when stories fade, the emotional imprint remains, not because the claims were valid, but because of the energy required to endure them. Those close to her describe a woman who has grown resilient through experience. Not hardened, but grounded. Someone who understands that not every battle needs to be fought publicly. That sometimes strength lies in protecting one's peace rather than correcting every falsehood. This perspective did not come easily. It was shaped through years of scrutiny, criticism, and misunderstanding. Moments when her intentions were questioned, her words dissected, and her silence misinterpreted. Over time, she learned that the loudest voices are not always the most truthful, and that self-preservation is not weakness. Within her home, the focus remains on stability. The rhythm of everyday life continues quietly. Routines, laughter, small moments that anchor the family amid outside noise. These are the moments that matter most, the ones unseen and unrecorded. Those who know her well say she is deeply intentional about the environment she creates for her children. She believes that emotional safety begins with consistency, honesty, and love, values she protects fiercely. In a world where speculation can travel faster than compassion, that protection becomes essential. The narrative surrounding public figures often forgets that they, too, feel the weight of words. That repeated speculation can shape perception even when untrue. And that silence, while dignified, does not mean unaffected. This moment also reveals something broader about the way stories are consumed today. Information moves at unprecedented speed, often without pause for verification. Emotion becomes currency. The more dramatic the claim, the more attention it receives, but attention does not equal truth. And as stories like this circulate, they leave behind more than confusion. They shape assumptions, reinforce bias, and quietly influence public perception long after the headlines fade. For Meghan, this is not just about enduring another wave of online chatter. It's about protecting the integrity of her family's story, about ensuring that her children grow up knowing who they are, not who the world claims them to be. Those close to her say she has become more intentional with her energy. She chooses where to invest it and where to step back. That choice is not avoidance, it is wisdom gained through experience. In moments like this, she leans into what grounds her: authenticity, love, and purpose. She understands that truth doesn't always need defending. Sometimes it simply needs time. The public may never see the quiet conversations, the reassuring moments, or the strength found in stillness. But they exist, shaping the reality behind the headlines, and perhaps that is the greatest contrast of all: the difference between what is loud and what is real. As the story continues to circulate online, it also invites reflection, not just about the individuals involved, but about the culture that consumes such stories. A culture that often prioritizes reaction over reflection, assumption over understanding. Yet within that noise, there is also an opportunity, a chance to pause, to question what we believe, to recognize the humanity behind public figures, because beyond the headlines and speculation lies a family striving for normalcy in an extraordinary world. And in that effort, there is quiet courage. Though uncomfortable, reveals something deeply human: the desire to protect one's loved ones, to maintain dignity, and to move forward without bitterness. It shows that strength does not always roar, sometimes it whispers. As the days pass, the story will likely fade from trending lists. Another headline will take its place. But for those living within it, the impact lingers, not as drama, but as a reminder of resilience. This moment, like many before it, underscores a simple truth: behind every story is a person, and behind every rumor, a real life shaped by its echo. The real narrative, often missed, is not about scandal, it's about endurance, and that is where this quietly rests, quietly draws toward its close. What remains is not scandal, not accusation, but reflection. The noise that once echoed so loudly begins to fade, replaced by something far more meaningful: perspective. In the absence of headlines and speculation, clarity has room to breathe. What this moment ultimately reveals is not a hidden truth or a dramatic revelation, but the enduring strength of those who choose dignity over reaction. In a world that thrives on instant judgment, there's something profoundly powerful about restraint. For Meghan, this period represents more than another wave of public scrutiny. It is a continuation of a journey defined by growth, self-awareness, and an unwavering commitment to protecting her family's emotional well-being. She has learned through experience that not every narrative deserves an answer, and not every voice deserves access to her truth. Those close to her describe a woman who has become deeply grounded. No longer shaken by every headline, she now moves with quiet intention. Her focus remains steady, nurturing her children, building a life rooted in authenticity, and choosing peace in moments where chaos once ruled. This sense of calm does not come from indifference, but from clarity, from understanding what truly matters when the noise fades. It comes from knowing that identity is not defined by rumors, but by values lived daily, away from the public gaze. Prince Harry, too, continues to stand beside her, not as a public figure seeking approval, but as a partner committed to protecting his family's emotional world. Together, they have built a life centered on privacy, intention, and healing. Their strength lies not in responding to every narrative, but in remaining grounded when others attempt to define them. What many fail to recognize is that silence can be an act of courage. It takes strength to step back when provoked, to resist. The urge to explain and to trust that truth does not need constant defense. In a culture that rewards reaction, choosing stillness becomes a quiet form of power. As this story slowly fades from public attention, it leaves behind an important reminder: not everything that circulates deserves belief. Not every headline reflects reality, and not every silence signals guilt. Sometimes, silence is simply peace reclaimed. This moment also invites a broader reflection on the nature of modern storytelling. In an age where information moves faster than understanding, empathy often arrives too late. The responsibility to question, to pause, and to seek truth belongs not just to those in the spotlight, but to everyone watching, because behind every viral claim is a human story, one that deserves care, not consumption. For Meghan and her family, the focus remains where it has always been: forward, toward growth, healing, and a future shaped by intention rather than intrusion. They continue to build a life guided by purpose, not perception. And while the world may move on to the next headline, this moment serves as a quiet reminder of what truly matters. Not speculation, not noise, but connection, resilience, and the strength found in choosing peace. In the end, this story was never about scandal. It was about how easily narratives form and how powerful it can be to step outside them. As the dust settles, one truth remains clear: dignity endures long after rumors fade. And sometimes the most powerful response is simply to live well, with integrity, compassion, and grace.